Hi everyone, and welcome to our fireside with Dave Lockie, the Web3 lead from WooCommerce. Before I ask Dave to introduce himself, just introduce myself. I'm Justin. Most of you will know me. I'm one of the co-founders of Boson Protocol, and Boson enables trust minimized transactions of real-world assets without the need for code. Without the need for intermediaries, just code and independent dispute resolvers. And we're really overwhelmed to have Dave here with us today to talk about our partnership, so the partnership between Boson and WooCommerce, and then more broadly, Web3 and the future of commerce. And Dave is a real kind of thought leader in this area, so really excited to have you. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks, Justin. Pleasure to be here. Appreciate the invite.
So let's kick off. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you sort of managed to fall down the rabbit hole of crypto and Web3, and what led you to your role at Woo, and perhaps a bit about what you do there.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I did zoology at university, and I think you'll understand why that's relevant further down the road. So pretty soon after university, I got into web stuff, building websites. Quickly realized that WordPress was a vastly superior way to build websites than anything else that I found. I fell down the WordPress rabbit hole pretty hard, pretty deep, and for a long time. So this was probably 2006, something like that. I've been working in the WordPress space ever since. WordPress and subsequently WooCommerce, which is the de facto e-commerce plugin for WordPress. So it took my job of building websites for people, ways for people to communicate online, and transformed it into, actually, no, this is a way that people can make a living online. They can set up a store, they can sell whatever they like, goods and services. And over time built an agency, grew up to about 65 people at our peak. I exited that business around COVID time, did some time with the agency that bought us, and I guess as I was down ramping from, honestly, the stress of running like a people business at that size, I kind of fell back into my interest with crypto, which had emerged on the run up in 2017, thanks to a developer that worked in the agency called Nick. Short story, I came in one morning, he had this like a graph, looked like an application monitoring system like New Relic or something like that, showing like resource usage over time. I was like, wow, like super pleased that you're here before everyone else, checking out on the health of our clients' websites. And he was like, oh no, this is my ETH miner at home. And I was like, you're what? And I think it was that transposition of the web that I knew, like here are server resources being used to do a job, and then this idea of money over the internet. It just helped me understand, brought it into, I guess, sharp relief that this was an exceptionally clever idea. The fact that there was internet native money. And I went down the rabbit hole pretty deeply for a couple of years. And I think, as often people do, when it gets boring and hard and the price action is doing nothing interesting, maybe you lost some money, you kind of fall out of love. And this is what COVID was happening, and I was selling my business, and like there was a lot of other stuff going on. But anyway, as all that stuff down ramped and crypto started becoming more interesting again, sadly I missed all the DeFi summer fun. I realized that what I wanted to do was take my passion and experience for WordPress and WooCommerce, that 15 odd years of just getting to know the community and the product and the ecosystem and the dynamics within it back to front, and combine that with what I saw as an incredibly important technology for the future of people, which is like the internet's own money. And I was fortunate enough that the founder of Automatic agreed that there was something interesting in that intersection. If you imagine that Venn diagram, and so that's the role that he put me in, that I asked for, and he put me in, which is figure out how WordPress, WooCommerce, all of the things that we do at Automatic, including Tumblr and Pocket Casts and Day One, something like we have quite a broad church of software products. How do those overlap with the Venn diagram of everything that's happening in Web3? And so that's what I've been doing for the last 18 months. And I'm incredibly grateful and humbled to be in this role. It's quite an unusual one within the Web3 space, where I guess most folks are sort of stuck within the Web3 part of that Venn diagram and trying to figure out how to drag people in, like how do we onboard users, how do we onboard funds. I'm sort of on the other Venn diagram thinking, okay, well, look, we're a massively important part of the web. WordPress powers 35 whatever% of all domains online, so we have this huge responsibility, but also this huge reach and influence. So what are the opportunities that Web3 allows for the users of Automatic's products to do more? And I want to qualify what more looks like, but I also want to pause there because I realized that was a bit of a monologue, Justin. So
that's super interesting. I mean, I always find it interesting how people get into, be deeply embedded in Web3, and perhaps you can just sort of elaborate a little. I mean, you mentioned that Woo powers like 35% of the web, and so that is a huge responsibility. Perhaps you can sort of just tell us a bit about Woo, the vision and the values, because I know this is a kind of major factor, with our sort of alignment as organizations as well, and something we love about Woo.
Yeah, thank you. And so, like, just being clear, WordPress powers about 35% of domains. WooCommerce doesn't run on all WordPress sites, but WooCommerce is still one of the major e-commerce platforms, and so, like, your point still stands. This is an important part of the web's infrastructure, and it's worth going back to the roots of WordPress to understand WooCommerce. So WordPress's mission is to democratize publishing, and in the year 2023, that feels, I don't know, it feels kind of quaint. But you have to rewind all the way back to, the dying years of Web 1, where the internet was really, if you buy Chris Dixon's sort of read, write, own, we're just in the read phase. The information is on servers. There is no social media. There are no smartphones. And so being able to give people a way to express themselves online was a really powerful idea. And so that was what WordPress was about, is like, how do we give anyone the ability to communicate online, to start collaborating in the realm of information, to add their voice, to add their comments, to build an audience and to influence people, for sure. And WooCommerce came along and looked at WordPress and said, well, we could just add, a product and an order concept in here and add a payment gateway, and we've got an e-commerce system, and then anyone in WordPress can use this e-commerce system to take this ability to communicate freely and extend that into transacting freely. And that idea of transacting is really powerful. And I think the mission of WooCommerce is to democratize e-commerce, to democratize transacting online. And I think you can draw a really nice line from democratizing publishing to democratizing e-commerce through to where Web3 hopefully takes us, which is truly enabling anyone, anywhere, to make a living online. And just to kind of call back to my roots a little bit and try and complete the framing. So I honestly believe that when we put a smartphone, an internet connected smartphone, in the pocket of like 1 billion people, it changed us as a species. And that all of the things that were important up until that time, all of the kind of hacks that we'd built into our society, you know, institutions, but also law and education, and you know what money had become, and finance, and all of the stuff around that. Like digital humans have different qualities. We have infinite memory, instant global communication, access to the world's, you know, collective experience. We have all of these different things, and it means that we need different things from our systems and processes and tools. And so part of that, I believe, is to protect the openness of the internet, which is where WordPress came from, and where the internet used to be before social media platforms became dominant. You know, anyone could run a server, anyone could run a website, anyone could run a WooCommerce store. But how do we lock it open? How do we protect those freedoms? But also, how do we enhance them? So, you know, if you want to set up an e-commerce store in the US or the UK, like it's, you know, it's gravy. You've got a bunch of payment processes, the logistics and shipping are in place. Like, you know, you're on easy mode. If you go to other parts of the world where, I don't know, like currency is not so stable, or payment processor fees are really high, or you don't have government issued ID, actually these things are incredibly difficult. And I believe that they hold back the ability of people to transact and to create a living online, which is something that we increasingly need to do. I mean, we all spend a lot of time online, and making a living online, that kind of freedom to make a living online, for me, brings that original mission of democratization into the modern day. Because to make a living online, yes, you need the freedom to be able to spin up a server and run a website and do all that stuff, but it also needs to matter. You need to be able to do that in terms of like your income, your freedom to communicate and reach your audience, and not be throttled by TikTok because they suddenly want to inject ads. Like I see all of that stuff as friction in the machine of human creativity and connection and value creation. And I think there's a better future, and that the permissionless protocols of crypto that underpin Web3 are a really important concept and part of the future of where the web is going. It's not all about that, but it's a really important infrastructure. And so, yeah, that's the continuation of that trajectory of enabling people to be free online. It's what I care about. It's why I get out of bed.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, really inspiring to hear those same vision and values. I mean, almost word for word. And I would have plagiarized it had I read it before I wrote the first white paper. But you know, at Boson, our vision is to democratize commerce, to, as you mentioned, you know, locking commerce on the web open, and really, I guess the whole concept of a protocol, and you know, why do we decentralize? Why do we hand the keys of the power to the community? Is, you know, so that instead of having a strapline like, you know, don't be evil, we actually can't be evil, you know, right. And really locking those doors open, and you know, exactly aligned with, you know, we've often said enabling sort of, you know, thousands and thousands of e-commerce millionaires rather than a couple of trillionaires. Is the aim. So yeah, I mean, it's a real natural fit there. I think, you know, both on a personal level, and the vision and values of Woo, and so, you know, we love that. So okay, so if we sort of move a little on, I mean, I think the first part what we wanted to talk about a bit is the partnership that we have between Boson and WooCommerce, and perhaps I'll sort of kick off, and it might help everyone if I sort of describe what it is that we're going to do. So we have an initial functionality which we'll be launching by the end of this year. In fact, you know, we're expecting that quite a bit sooner, which is introducing a Boson redemption app on the WooCommerce app marketplace. So this will enable sellers primarily to do two things. So sellers can kind of configure redemption of their physical NFTs to happen on their existing WooCommerce site. And so that no matter which channel, which Web3 channel the buyer purchased the NFT, so the buyer could purchase the NFT in the metaverse, the buyer could purchase the NFT on an NFT marketplace, but sellers can plug in this redemption widget, ensuring that all this redemption comes back to their own site. So also sellers can continue using their existing back office commerce operation processes on WooCommerce, such as order management, fulfillment, shipping, and tracking, etc. And so, yeah, the benefits for enabling this first stage redemption on a seller's existing WooCommerce site is that they can continue leveraging these operational processes, but also be able to bring these buyers back. And what we're finding a big trend for is and I think we can talk a bit about this, but the Web3 enables the kind of detachment of commerce from the main body of an e-commerce sort of system, and I think because of the programmability of the underlying substrate of NFTs and blockchain, you can now go and you can program to do this commerce anywhere. But of course, sellers want to bring those buyers back to sort of own that relationship and control the user experience. And this first stage of it sort of enables that. I don't know if you want to sort of come in there before I move on to the second stage.
No, that's a great description.
Okay, and then the next version of the app will then extend to enable sellers to do Web3 commerce all within their WooCommerce instance. So more specifically, our app will allow sellers to create physical NFTs directly from their WooCommerce instance. So for those who are not super familiar with Boson, what Boson does is it enables the sort of tokenization, if you like, of a physical item. So a seller can list a physical item, a buyer will come along and commit funds to this smart contract and receive an NFT. But this NFT is now what we call it's like a forward contract for the purchase of this item. And it's like a bearer asset. So whoever holds that NFT has the right to either redeem for the physical, or if the seller defaults or the quality is not met or whatever, they will then receive the money back that's sort of escrowed by the smart contract. So this will then enable sellers to create these physical NFTs directly within WooCommerce and then publish them to all of these different Web3 channels of their choice, along with all of the functionality of Boson, things like token gating, enabling phygital, so digital and physical pairs. We've got a whole load of developments coming, like things we're calling sequential commit, basically royalties on secondary sales of physical items, all of this other functionality. And then but be able to do these kind of these drops on the seller's website now. So all of the kind of things that some of the Woo sellers may have seen the likes of sort of Nike and Adidas doing with super expensive agencies, or spending 100 million on Artifact, for example. For any of the Woo sellers that don't have $100 million to buy a company like that, well, out of the box, Boson will enable that from Woo, and also enable Woo sellers to sort of leverage a lot of the Web3 and Web 2.5 bridges that we're building that basically enable this sort of like real Web3 commerce, but with Web 2 UX.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been talking for a long time, since before us, and well, with Automatic. I mean, we've been in touch for years now, Justin. I think my mental model for how Boson works, or the opportunity that Boson creates, is back to that Jim Barksdale quote of, there are two ways to make money: bundling and unbundling. And for me, Boson is a really smart way to think about unbundling e-commerce. So you take I'm buying this thing and I'm getting this thing fulfilled to me. Usually we think of that as like one, it's one transaction. We think of it as like an atomic thing, but it's not really. It's two transactions. It's the sending the money and the receiving of the goods, and only once those two things are they complete. But I think Web3 has provided the programmability of tokens and money to enable a bunch of innovators like Boson to come along and go, okay, well, look, how can we use this programmability? Okay, we can unbundle what e-commerce means. And I think there are a few different benefits to doing this that are really interesting. The first is that it allows sellers to sell anywhere, because you don't need to be able to complete the whole transaction anywhere. You just need to be able to buy the NFT anywhere. And that, as people who are familiar with Web3 know, connecting a wallet and signing a transaction it's very lightweight as an experience. You don't have to go to an e-commerce site. You don't have to add your product to a cart. You don't have to check out. You don't have to fill in your shipping details. Maybe you don't even know where you're going to be in a week's time when this thing is going to arrive. We live in an increasingly mobile society. So just saying, look, I want this product and I'm going to commit to buying it. We'll figure out the rest later, I think is a powerful idea in and of itself, because frankly, most people don't spend most of their time on like an e-commerce site. Most people don't spend their time on Amazon. They spend it on social media. So I think that's a really powerful idea, just being able to do that kind of commitment up front in any environment, and especially as we add 3D environments, metaverse, all the rest of this stuff comes online, as we see gaming, maybe even television becoming more interactive and having this sort of buyability there, I think is just super cool. I think it allows for some interesting new dynamics in commerce because of course, as soon as you've detached these two parts, you separate it in terms of experience. So you can buy in the metaverse and redeem on an e-commerce store, but you also allow separation in terms of time. So you as the buyer can decide if and when you want to redeem that NFT. And as a seller, it lets you forward sell some goods. So, I've got a barrel of whiskey or some wine, and I as a seller, I want that, but I don't necessarily want it in my house right now. I just want to have a claim to that. And I want the chance to redeem that later on if I so choose. So I think that separation creates a lot of opportunity for creativity. But there's a third thing as well, which I've only just thought about, which is when you're talking about product drops, which is this sort of Reddit hug phenomenon. Have you heard about that? The Reddit hug?
No.
So a lot of people, one of the best things that can happen to your website or your e-commerce store is you get really popular on Hacker News or Reddit or something like this. But what inevitably happens is, as soon as that happens, you get a ton of visitors and your site goes down, and you can't actually monetize any of that attention, because that's the nature of Web2 infrastructure, right? If it spikes, then suddenly everything bottlenecks, and you've got 404s or 403s. So that can be extremely frustrating. But Web3 infrastructure doesn't work like that. It's decentralized, and it can accept as many transactions as the fundamental network. So I guess in this case, Ethereum or whatever layer 2 Boson deploys on, how many transactions that network can cope with, which is going to be a lot more than a little e-commerce hosting plan somewhere. So it frees merchants up to be able to deal with spiky traffic, and it allows their e-commerce store in turn to process at a it kind of, we can use a COVID analogy here. I haven't done this yet, but it flattens the curve. So rather than everything just being I want to buy and transact and check out, and then I'm gone tomorrow, you have like a more gently grading curve up and down over time, which I think allows merchants to capture more of the value if they do get some of this spiky attention. And frankly, like when we've got these huge global networks, attention is going to become more and more spiky. Probably more and more short term, but the highs are going to be higher.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting also that you talk about this sort of separation of the transactions, and I mean, we came across that design for a number of reasons. One is to be able to use just code and game theory to ensure fair exchange, put some constraints on, and you have to lock up funds and stuff. But we were also looking at existing models. I mean, one of the things from an economic point of view we wanted to do was create like a digital market for physical things, like we've seen in commodity markets, for example. Like you can sell a ton of cocoa beans. That ton of cocoa beans can digitally whiz around the world. There's no cocoa beans moving until the final settlement. And so what a big part of the concept of Boson is, how do we do that to all of the inventory for all of the products on the planet, basically, and create this like neutral platform, and kind of conceptually a bit like TCP/IP for commerce, where you can kind of tokenize, address, and transfer these things digitally.
Cool. And I think it's one thing that might not, or maybe one thing that I'd like to emphasize and reinforce there is that Boson is creating a gateway to bring real world assets on the chain. So one thing that I heard at a conference recently is that crypto's done a great job of building this incredible decentralized infrastructure, permissionless tools, like brand new experiences. It's incredible. Like, banks have failed to do that. Like, this is incredible technology. Problem is, most people don't care about the assets that are on chain. Like, only nerds are ever going to care about
Magic.
Ethereum. Yeah, like, what the heck is Dogecoin? I mean, maybe it becomes baked into Musk's mega app or whatever. But I think most people, most of the time, are going to care more about real world assets and existing legacy assets than they are about these new ones. Maybe given enough time, we'd swap out concepts of nation state currency for internet currency, but because you can just replicate nation state currencies on chain, I don't know how much oxygen that idea gets. And so anyway, my short point is, I'll try and shorten it. The stuff that stays within the crypto bubble is going to be quite a small portion of what's possible. As soon as you can create a safe, real bridge to be able to do the same thing with real world assets on chain, and we start doing a better job of abstracting away the infrastructure and just concentrating on building great experiences, I think you're unlocking like the other 99.99% of the economy outside of the realm of crypto. And I think that's just, it's a concept that is worth backing, because sure, like we still have to, that still has to play out, but the opportunity size is just so big, like it's worth going for.
Yeah, I think, I guess for the kind of e-commerce people conceptually, who might not be that familiar with Web3 technologies, I think a concept that would be important for them to sort of kind of grasp initially is this unbundling, right? That at the moment, everyone has to ride their sort of, horse and cart into the central market square every Sunday to exchange, goods, and that being sort of, and that moving forward, that e-commerce can be sort of decomposed and plugged in all across this sort of internet that we're creating. And I know you've got some really interesting ideas on sort of kind of convergence between social and wallets and commerce, and perhaps you can sort of share some of that with us.
Thanks. I appreciate the kind words. We'll see how interesting they are. But one thing that I have really
it doesn't guarantee, as
yeah.
frequently informs, does not guarantee that others do. But I think we'd probably be sat next to each other at a dinner party.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Probably everyone else talking over there. Yeah, so disclaimer applies. But one thing that I've definitely noticed over the last year in crypto is that social feeds and wallets just seem to be converging. So you've got something like DBank introducing like a social stream, or you have things like Lens protocol. They've just rebranded to Hey.xyz, like Lenster, or Farcaster, that allow you to transact within the social network and to have to merge the concept of a wallet and asset with that socialization. So I really like in Farcaster, for example, when it tells me what a bunch of other people are minting, like, what they discovered. Oh, that's cool. I can just click there and mint that too. And I like with Lens or Mirror, the way that you can collect posts. And I think it's a different paradigm than the kind of registration wall or paywall concept that we've sort of had to endure with the web up till now. In that it's mystery meat, isn't it? You can write a great teaser, force somebody to register, and then it's a bait and switch, and actually it wasn't worth all that time and effort, and you certainly don't want a $29 a month subscription. Whereas if I see something that is just in my social feed and it's like, well, this is like, it's 10 cents or it's $1 or whatever, I can be like, yeah, sure, I'll collect that. I'd like to keep that. That can be part of my personal library going forwards, because I'd like my own copy of that. Not that I'd like to bookmark it and hope that it's there later. I would like a copy of this in my wallet because I'm going to use it as part of my reference library or my research or my journaling or my AI training material or whatever it is. So I just really like that mechanic, not necessarily instead of registration or paywalling, because I think there's a place for all of it. It just adds a new string to the bow of monetization options for content creators, which is like, if you like this, if you want to support me, here's a low barrier to entry, which of course you can't do these small payments easily through traditional payment rails. So that's something that I think really is unlocked by, crypto really does solve that. You can make a 1 cent payment and it's not cost prohibitive, especially under there too. So I'm really excited by that idea, because I think bookmarking on Web2 is kind of broken. And I think this idea of content NFTs and being able to collect those it just fixes some of those fundamental problems with bookmarking. You don't rely on the website being up, you don't rely on the content being changed, neither do you have to take the content out of context and stick it into Evernote or Pinterest or something else like that. You preserve the rights, you preserve the connection with the author. And I think you end up building a much richer ecosystem of content creation and consumption around all of that. But I also think that you then start to inherit some of these interesting mechanisms for marketing as well. So, we have content that goes viral, or you have, affiliate marketing for products, or multi-level marketing, whatever it is, whatever these mechanisms are, when those converge and you can transact on chain as they're happening. Okay, I've minted this music NFT from this artist that I really like, and I've now got that in my wallet. But if you see that I've done that and you mint it from my action on this network, so you're I'm helping spread the word. I'm acting as a node in this distribution network, and maybe I get 1% of the value of the transaction as as an affiliate scheme or whatever. So I think these are all really rudimentary ideas, but I think what I'm trying to do is paint a picture of the creative space that is opening up right now between tokenized content and the convergence of that with social media and wallets and the ability to pay. Yeah. And I think that that's where I'm focus, because I think that's how we best serve, so my role is at WooCommerce. That's I guess my home team, but Automatic is a business with many brands. And one thing that I'm always mindful of is like, well, how does this technology benefit WordPress? So a couple of examples. One is that it would allow anyone on WordPress to sell something. If it's just a pure digital asset, they can just sell it through their WordPress site. It's a Web3 wallet connect. You buy the NFT, you're done, and you walk away. If it's a physical good, however, then maybe it's going to take you a month or two to spin up a WooCommerce site to the perfection that you'd like. In the meantime, you can just stand up a WordPress site, do a drop, sell through Boson, and build the fulfillment website later on. But it brings that ability to make a living back out of the realm of e-commerce, back out of the realm of specialized B2B subscription services or whatever. It just allows that creativity to flow right across the WordPress space. And I think tokenized content does the same thing. If you allow people with a WordPress site to create a tokenized version of their content and for people to collect that and, pay a small fee for the privilege, I think it just creates this incredible creative space. And we have, Tumblr is part of our estate as well. It's a really interesting social network, continues to be really vibrant, and it plays a really interesting and valuable role in the worlds of social media where, the Facebooks and everyone else is trying to get you to have one profile and tell you everything about them. Tumblr takes a totally opposite philosophy. It's like, create as many profiles as you like. We don't want to know who you are. We just want to know that you comply with the terms of service. Be yourself, explore your identity. It's healthy to have multiple identities. Go and explore who you are. And I think that really resonates particularly with younger people. So what happens when you have a world of tokenized content and a social network like Tumblr? I think that's something that I think about a lot. And there are no spoilers here. There are no kind of upcoming launches or anything, but I just love the opportunities that those concepts combine to create. Sorry, that's a really long answer. Is that kind of the stuff that you wanted to?
It's super interesting. I mean, that vision that you have for this kind of transactability of content, I mean, I totally share that. I think one of the sort of aims of Boson is whether that content is on-chain or off-chain, whether that's a physical or a digital, one of the core design principles of Boson is that we want to digitize this off-chain, these real-world assets, so that they can be bundled as content. And then, the other point that you make there of, having multiple identities. I mean, when you're doing commerce transactions, there's a big trust problem there, right? There's the primary problems of fair exchange and trust, and there's addressed by trusted sellers or intermediaries or of some sort. And so one of the things we do with Boson is we handle the trust. So you could be in a video game buying a physical item from a giant ogre. You don't need to know or trust who that is. You could be on someone's Tumblr page and they're selling you physical and digital content. You don't, the trust.
Totally allowed to be an ogre on Tumblr, by the way. It's kind of encouraged.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, likewise. So, and really creating this kind of commerce interface so that digital and physical content are just, identical and can be handled in the same way and unbundled. So if you think about taking commerce transactions out of this central market square with all of that friction, etc., and turning them into digitized, almost like these micro commodities, and then making it really easy to drop these transactions into all of these different scenarios, be it social, is, I think, just going to be an absolute game changer. And I think we'll, 5 or 10 years time, commerce is going to just become kind of ubiquitous and pervasive, as you'll be walking along the street and you'll see something that you can kind of double blink on, and there'll be a visual search, and then you can go and buy the thing, and and all of this will just be taken care of. And so a big part of what the vision we have for Boson is that we provide this sort of trust layer. You don't need to kind of worry about sellers or rely on intermediaries to trust.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think what starts to happen is that we erode the boundaries of some of these concepts. So at the moment we have, like, okay, this is just content consumption, and this is marketing, and this is commerce, and this is social activity. Like, they are sort of specific things that we do online, or there are lots of things that we do online, but they're all kind of, like, I won't show you maybe I will, like, this is a smartphone interface. It's like each of our activities online, it's like within this silo. It's like, oh, I'm going to jump into this app and do this thing. It just strikes me as kind of detached from the way that life is. I mean, fine, we've built different rooms to do different things. You've got a kitchen and you've got a bathroom, but like, you go out into nature, it's it's all connected.
Yeah.
And I think human connections are richer when they're more connected. And I think that the relationships between creators and consumers are more subtle than, oh, this falls into the marketing bucket or this falls into the commerce bucket. It's about collaborating, co-creating, co-designing, co-imagining the world, and making it happen. And at different times, I can be all of those things. I could be a consumer, a marketing prospect, a customer, a creator myself, a collaborator, an investor. And I think that's really what companies like Nike see. Maybe this is just me reading the tea leaves wrongly, but I wrote an article for WordPress.com VIP about how NFTs allow brands to build entirely different types of organizations. So at the moment you've got, like, a fan and a customer and like an employee and a shareholder, and usually, like, the overlap between those Venn diagrams is variable. So if you're a fan and a customer, there's probably a pretty decent overlap there, but the number of customers who are also shareholders, maybe they hold some Nike stock, I guess, like, there's a reasonable overlap there. But I think what NFTs allow you to do is to just, like, collapse that, like, make those intersections greater. Because if you're a fan, then you can collaborate on a design for a new pair of sneakers. And if the community of fans votes for this design and it goes into production, then you could also be rewarded. I'm not suggesting they're going to do this, but you could also be rewarded by a share of the revenue generated from that design. So suddenly you start breaking down these quite rigid boundaries. So I'm going to call back to my zoological past again. Life is about semi-permeable membranes, semi-permeable boundaries. It's about what you choose to let through and what you don't. And that's what creates, the simplest cell. And right up to the organizations that we have, what's allowed through the security desk at the front gate, what traffic is allowed through the internet gateways. And Web3 just allows us to design very rich semi-permeable membranes for everything that we want to do in life. I think it's really compelling. And I love the way that tokenizing real world assets in an e-commerce context like Boson is doing, and as WooCommerce merchants will be able to enjoy through this partnership, helps keep that space open and give people, frankly, like, all the people with so much better ideas than, like, we're going to have now, the opportunity to go and do this, to go and create these, like, organizations of the future.
Yeah, I think, going back to your point of, your mobile app with all of these silos, my view on that is that the incentives at the moment are set up in such a way that each one of those apps is trying to ring fence, lock in and silo a set of users doing a specific thing and specialize on that and just, do that. And we're moving towards, a new paradigm in Web3 where we unbundle all of those tools that, and basically hand those to the individual creators or sellers so that, they can perform those services. They can, each one of those apps that's got all these specialized services that they now can composably plug that in. And, I guess the other big shift is that now the users actually get to own and govern the networks that that they're a part of, right?
Yeah.
Instead of being the product, they become the kind of co-owners of it.
They get a vote. If they have the governance token, they get a vote, and we go back to this idea of democratization. And yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess I don't see individual apps going away. What I hope is that they're just different views, like the different contexts in which to interact with. There's a deeper connection that underpins all of that stuff, so that when I go into this app, it's one particular window because it's task oriented, it's helping me get the job done, it's providing its like expertise, but the data, the content, the interactions, the relationships are there for other apps to also look onto and contribute to as it's relevant, as we design for any particular of our identities to be connected in relationships to people and things. So I think there's that richness to it as well. And part of a relationship is transacting, and that's what we call commerce at the moment.
Yeah, brilliant. Dave, any sort of final words? I mean, not wanting to invite you to blurt
Have another 10-minute monologue,
but what can we expect sort of in the next, I guess, sort of 12 months with WooCommerce and directionally?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So I'm not here today to say, look, we're leaders in the Web3 space. I try and think about where things are going, but that doesn't mean that we're about to launch a Woo wallet or anything like that. We have this incredible responsibility to look after all the stakeholders of the software that we build and contribute to in an open source manner. And so if you're looking for what we're going to be doing in a year's time, look at what the market is doing now or a year ago. We're very much, if I use the analogy of an investor, we're more like a Series C kind of investor than we are an angel or a seed investor. We want to make sure that decisions we make are going to provide good experiences and stability and maturity, both for individual merchants and for the ecosystem. So we've only just launched crypto payment processing solutions onto the marketplace last year. Crypto payments have been around for quite a while now. We're obviously doing we're stepping outside of our comfort zone a little, frankly. We're doing some of the Web3 partnerships because, frankly, these concepts feel important enough that we want to be involved. We want to learn by participating, and if we want to participate, we need to partner with the experts. And the experts aren't businesses that were here 10 years ago. They're younger companies, but those sorts of bets are more an exception than the rule. So what you can expect from us is continuing to build an amazing e-commerce experience for people that care about the ability to own their site, to choose where they host it, what extensions they install, who they share their data with, etc. And to integrate whatever opportunities, whether they be Web3, whether they be innovations in shipping or AI, as we think great candidates for partnership or listing on the marketplace, come along. We will do our best to make sure that we're enabling WooCommerce merchants to make a living online. That's our mission, and that involves, yes, keeping up with what's happening, but not getting out in front of our skis. I think it's a pretty existential time for crypto and Web3 at the moment. We're definitely fighting a big boss in terms of US regulatory sentiment. The macroeconomic situation certainly isn't helping, and the crimes and continued FUD around that ecosystem absolutely don't help either. But I am certain, it's just not something you can take for sure, but I feel a very high degree of certainty that this continues to be fundamentally important technology that creates freedom and opportunity online, and that we're going to see a new wave of innovation. I'd love it to be around content monetization and creator economy, and some of these things that we've talked about today. Bringing real world assets on chain, I think, is an obvious way to increase the number of people that are using the technology. So yeah, we're going to follow what is happening in the broader market, I think, is the very short answer. Like, we're happy to be second mouse most of the time.
Perfect. Well, brilliant. Thanks, Dave. I mean, just to end, I mean, from our point of view, having seen now a couple of bear markets, the first one when we were just a concept, and second one where we just had a kind of demo version. Yeah, we're just sort of heads down building for the next bull, and we're looking forward to be in the great position to have the whole kind of protocol DApp and plugged into these kind of scaled distribution channels like WooCommerce, and hopefully our sort of audience have kind of learned a bit more about WooCommerce, the partnership, you, Dave, and sort of vision for the future. But I think also the big takeaway is it's not just Web3 that are have the same vision and values for a democratized commerce, and I think people probably understand why we're so happy to be in partnership with you, Dave, and Woo. So thank you very much, and yeah, hope to have you back when we're launched, and we can talk a little bit more practically about the amazing things that sellers will be able to do with Boson and Woo.
Yeah, I would love to be sitting here with you in a few months' time talking about an incredible success story for merchants. That's what we care about, great outcomes for merchants. So thank you for the opportunity today, Justin, and see you all again down the road.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone.